Today we're talking about the seventh chakra. This is the final in a series of 7 talks we've done about all the chakras. And it's called the Joyful Chakra series because the idea is to understand how they all flow together, how they work as a unit. We can look at them individually because that's interesting, but we have to understand them in the context of the whole, or else they don't make any sense. Like, it's that understanding that we are a whole being, and it's really, really valuable. It's sort of like understanding if you look at your arm and your arm can go up and down, and then someone says, well, why does the arm go up and down? But we're going to pretend we don't have a brain, right? Or we're going to pretend we don't have intention. Well, it doesn't make any sense. It only makes sense when we understand the whole. So this is the real intention of this entire chakra series. And especially because today we're talking about the 7th chakra, right? Sahasrara. I can never say the name of this in Sanskrit, the 7th chakra. And the 1,000-petaled lotus and all those things. And it often feels very surreal, feels very disconnected. It's our connection to God. It's our connection to oneness. It's our connection to supreme consciousness, the quantum field. And we think, okay, well, that's great. But how does that connect into the rest of us? You know, that ethereal sense of life feels like something that I only do in meditation, or only gurus experience, or only advanced yogis when they experience samadhi and they absolutely, just love the bliss and ecstasy of life. But that doesn't apply to you and I because we're just, lowly humans that are stuck in our 2nd chakra or something, right? The 7th chakra obviously has nothing to do with us, and it's not true. Every single one of us here has an active 7th chakra. And it's not even like we can talk about it being blocked and all that kind of thing, but it's us that activates it. We get to choose this. For example, when we look at the science of how biology and chakras fit together, we often connect the pineal gland with the 7th chakra. And the pineal gland excretes melatonin and all these lovely things. Like if we look at the physical aspect, the 3D expression of this very ethereal part of us. And of course, what does melatonin do? It quiets all the rest of the glands, right? It causes us to rest. It causes us to sleep. It causes us to find that inner stillness. And one of the big things they talk about today is the calcification of the pineal gland. Based on many, many, many aspects. If you Google that, you'll go down 100 rabbit holes. But what's interesting to me is it's actually the disconnection to God. And again, I'm going to use that word. Well, I'm not going to use it a lot, but that's a word that I'm comfortable with. But definitely find the word that feels right to you. Maybe it's infinite. Maybe it's consciousness. Maybe it's Brahman. Maybe it's Atman. Whatever the word is, the placeholder that we want to use to describe something indescribable, we've disconnected from it. From life, from teaching, from maybe lifestyle, from a million things. Everything in the body atrophies if we don't use it. So to me, what's really interesting about what scientists are finding about the calcification of the pineal gland isn't necessarily because we're eating this or we're doing this, and definitely sleeping in the dark helps to increase melatonin and perhaps reconnect us with our pineal gland. I'm not saying there's not good things we can do to help. But first we have to actually consciously connect with it. We have to believe that the 7th chakra is actually part of who we are. It's almost like we've taken the pineal gland and gone, you don't really belong in my life. I can't even go there. I don't know how to integrate you. So we're going to just leave you. And we just don't integrate it. So we have a lot more power than we think about how to actually integrate this. And think about that. Think about if we can integrate the pineal gland back into our life on a really physical level. If we can reintegrate that into our glandular system, we have increased melatonin. We sleep better. We're calmer. We're more connected. We're more centered. Our nervous system is quieter. They even connect the pineal gland with the fountain of youth. And we'll circle back to this one. That if a strong pineal gland, a really healthy, vibrant, connected pineal gland slows down aging, which is why lots of people want to take melatonin to slow the effects of aging. But we have the power internally, we have the power energetically to reconnect the circuit. And then the melatonin will be created spontaneously and naturally from within. You know, I'm not saying a little bit of melatonin if you can't sleep is a bad idea. I'm just saying we are in control of this pharmacy, but we have to reconnect it. We have to reconnect with our own divine self. So this is one of the number one reasons I really want to talk about the seventh chakra. Because in all spiritual practices, we understand that we are fully human and fully physical. This is almost a foundational idea that we are a divine being having a physical experience, or however we want to see that. We meditate, we listen for guidance, we want to cultivate intuition. This is what we're doing. So we need to really reconnect with this and understand how it moves through our life. And so that's what we're gonna talk about today. So just so that we're all on the same page, I'm just going to talk about the chakras in the light that this talk fits. Because you can talk about all the chakras in terms of health, emotions, a million things. But for me, this is really about how the soul fits into the world. How do our chakras help us actually navigate this world, regardless of what they govern inside of us and all that? But how do they create this manifestation? So if you imagine we talk about the seventh chakra, and this is, say, oneness, our connection to the divine, infinity, which none of this means much, I don't think, right away, but we're going to elaborate on that. The sixth chakra, the third eye, this is where we listen. This is where we have a satellite dish, listening for our guidance, listening to the resonance that clicks in with this DNA signature, this one right here, and we listen into the, I always have this picture of Jodie Foster in that movie Contact, just waiting for the message, And then the fifth chakra, this is how we share what we hear. This is true communing. This is true communication. This is where we share this wisdom with others through connection, through all kinds of things. Then when we go down to the first chakra, this is our connection in the world. If you imagine that this chakra, the divine, infinity, it's a oneness. Infinity, as much as it's like everything, it's a oneness. It's one field of consciousness. It's a thing. When I say we are all one, God is omnipotent, God is omniscient, all these things, that we are all connected, that's the seventh chakra, that's the oneness. And if you imagine that oneness said one day, because it's important to personify the oneness and make it human, and we bring it down into the world and we split it into duality, and we now get to experience ourselves. This is the first chakra. This is me getting to actually experience you. This is me getting to experience the sunshine. This is me walking through the woods and smelling, the rotting leaves, or hearing a bird. This is duality. I get to experience other. How cool is that? I get to walk through the village and experience other people. I get to eat food. This is an experience of duality. It's like, oh, look, here's this thing and I'm going to ingest it. This is duality. So the first chakra is our manifestation in duality, right? This is us on the planet. In between, it gets a little bit more interesting. The second chakra is not only am I eating the food and feeling the sunshine and walking down the street, hey, there's another human there. How do we interact? How does this work? How does this incarnation of divinity connect with your incarnation of divinity? How does that work? Well, the answer often comes from the third chakra, because this is who I am. This was the assignment I was given this time. Ah, I see your assignment. That's interesting. Let's see what happens when we blend these assignments and these two interesting things, come together. How cool is that? This is the second chakra. The third chakra is who I am. My ego, my definition of self, my understanding of what makes me unique. What is it that I'm meant to share with the world that's unique to every other person on the planet, right? And then the heart center. And the heart center, I think we understand the least of all, because it is this interesting connector between this very physical incarnation. Who am I? Who am I with you? And how do I fit into this planet? With this really interesting upper triangle. But how am I infinite? How do I hear my messages from the infinite? And how do I share that with others? The heart is this beautiful connector between our infinite selves and our physical selves. It's so interesting. So this is the context of why we want to talk about the oneness. One of the most beautiful descriptions of this oneness is described in the tradition of Advaita. And it's, if you ever want to look up anything, I'm going to spell it for you. Advaita. And it's a teaching of oneness. It actually means not two. It's kind of that, who is the teacher? There was a guru, and there's a quote that he has that it's something like, what do you do when the others hurt you, or something? And his message is, there are no others. This is Advaita. This is this idea that there is no such thing as two. This first chakra experience of duality is the illusion of Maya. It's not an illusion that we should disregard. It's why we're here. We are here playing in this really fun illusion of separateness. It's enjoyable. I like chocolate. I love hanging out with you guys. I like having sex. I like walking through the woods. Duality's awesome. There's nothing wrong with playing in Maya. This is wonderful. But Advaita just reminds us that don't believe it's everything. No, remember that we are actually all one. And then walk out in the world. And this is fascinating to me because, so in Advaita they would say that all is Brahman. All. There is only one reality. There is only one existence here. And we are part of that. So of course with our dual mind, we think, oh, so you're saying like I am God? Like, is that what you're saying? Like I'm God? I'm co-creating my reality and all that kind of stuff, which is all true. But the words don't do it justice. Because we have this idea that if we see it as two in duality, and I'm God, that means there's something else out there that isn't God. And that's where it all falls apart. That yes, I am God. I am experiencing, I am creating, I am in this reality. But so is every single thing in the world. So is every single person, everything. Like that's where the words fall apart. There are no words to experience this. This is one of the great challenges, is that as soon as we start naming, this is why every great religion says, do not name God, whatever we want to call it. Do not name me. You are only going to get into trouble because it is the unnameable, unknowable. It's not possible. But there is something inside that we can know. But we have to get outside of our brain. We have to get out of the 3D model of our mind, right? This is what our brain is made for. Our brain is made for the 3D world, and it's epic. It's awesome. But to feel this, to experience this oneness, we have to feel it with the rest of our being. Right? This is, again, if we get attached to the 3D world and we believe it's the only reality, this is great suffering. Right? This is where suffering comes from, that I think that, oh, because I don't have enough money, I suffer, or because I no longer have, connection to that person, I suffer, or I can't do this, I suffer. Because we forget our nature, we forget who we really are. And maybe the suffering's important. Maybe that's why we came. Maybe that's why we were meant to forget. It's not a big judgment as to whether it's right or wrong. But it's important to remember, if we really want to have a full experience here, remembering makes it awesome. And this is how the 7th chakra fits in with the rest of our being. So how do we remember? So this is where a lot of the yogic techniques come in, which can be really annoying, right? Like you ever hear, almost the beginning of every yoga book ever written is this, a guru asking a student, well, who are you? And the student says, well, I'm Katrina. Okay, well, what if I rename you? Who are you now? I guess I'm someone else. Are you your arm? Well, I'll cut your arm off. Are you still you? And they go do this thing where they keep cutting every part of you, and you're not a doctor, you're not a teacher, you're not a this, you're not a anything. Well, who are you? And the students just left there going, we've taken away every 3-dimensional descriptor we've got. I don't know. And it's this whole frustration. One of my favorite descriptions of this, Amma actually tells this story about there's 10 gurus, or not gurus, yogis, going on a walk. And they walk down to a river. And as they walk across the river, it's kind of dangerous. So the first yogi gets out of the water and he stands and he decides he's going to count all the other yogis as they go across the water to make sure that they all get across. And he counts them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And he's like, oh no, somebody drowned. There's only 9 yogis. And everyone's like, and he keeps counting. Is like, I know there were 10 of us. Why can I only see 9? And of course, finally somebody comes along and the guy's freaking out. And he's like, there's only 9. And he says, I can only see 9. And the other guy goes, well, you're not counting you. This is the oneness. He or she who is watching, who is counting. The one who notices that, aha, I have brown hair. That is the oneness. The one that feels pain is the oneness. The one who feels the sunshine. The one who prefers this. The one who sees that. The consciousness within. The reason we can't describe it is because it isn't part of the physical world. It isn't describable. It is the one experiencing this. When we can connect with that aspect of ourselves, when we connect with the one watching, with the one having the experience, everything changes. So now imagine, let's go through the chakras again, right? And we're in our first chakra, and we are connected with the one who is watching, the one who is having the experience, the one who chose to come and experience duality. So all of a sudden that oneness is in the village. And they're walking around going, wow, someone's baking bread. Right? They're aware of it. And what's really amazing is they get to dive more into the smell of the bread. They get to dive more into the sensory perceptions of the first chakra. They feel more. They see more because they're aware of the one seeing. And if something bad happens, something we would judge as bad in duality, we are still aware that maybe we are judging this as bad and we're going, wow, I sure don't like this. But we're connected with the I, the real I, the really big I that says, this is quite an experience. We don't get lost in it. We're just like, wow, so this happens here? That sucks. It's not a big deal. So now imagine we're in the second chakra and we're experiencing each other and we're fully aware that there are eyes behind the eyes watching. And they're looking at this other person and they see the other person and they're also aware that there's someone watching them through this other being. Interesting. And suddenly the idea of interacting with another person becomes quite a sacred experience, becomes quite a divine experience, because I recognize that you too, you're like me. There is a unmanifest consciousness behind your eyes staring out and experiencing me. So this could even be the children we have, and we look at these interesting little unmanifest consciousnesses within this 2-year-old body that's just ticked that it didn't get a cookie. And again, it isn't a disconnection. Like we misunderstand it as a callousness or a coldness or not connecting. But you connect even more. Because your heart opens. Like you really deeply connect with everything. Because this is fully activated. And then you think of your third chakra. All of our issues with our sense of self. Well, if I fully understand and I'm connected to the one who is watching, does it matter how tall I am? Does it matter the job I have? Does it matter how much money I have? Does it matter the relationship I'm in? Does it matter how much weight I carry or what gender I am or what race? Like, does any of this matter? Because my full consciousness is of the one watching, who knows that I am none of those things. Not really. I am here in this, all the world's a stage. Sure, that's the role I'm playing. But I'm also super conscious of the one who is playing the role. So suddenly, my definition of self, I get to dive into it. I get to go, okay, so this is who I'm playing. I'm in. I will play this role 100%, all in, full acceptance, right? So then you imagine the fourth chakra, love. Like how easy is it to open your heart when you're aware of your infinite being self? Right? You can dive into everything. You can love more fully because we know that we are infinite. Right? Imagine our throat chakra, how we share, how we communicate, how we share our essence. Not just share what we think, but we share our essence. Well, this is connected to our third chakra, right? That I understand who I am. Maybe it's connected to the person I'm speaking to because I'm connected in my second chakra. Maybe I also understand the community. I understand the world I'm living in. Interesting. And then I also know what's coming from above and the messages that are coming from me. And I share as this beautiful collection of all those things. And then, of course, here, where we actually are listening and discerning and seeing the world from this perspective. Like we're actually watching the world through our third eye. It isn't just a receiver, but we're actually looking at the world through this incredible sight So it's interesting when we look at many of the yogic practices. So for example, there's a branch within the 8 limbs all about brahmacharya, which is the withdrawal of the senses. So that can be taken a lot of ways, and of course it can be done in many extreme ways where we completely disconnect from the 3D world altogether and we do not experience pleasure, pain, all these kind of things, and we just withdraw completely. And if that's on your path, like, whatever, right? That's okay. But we don't have to be like that. We can actually practice brahmacharya, because you can imagine the practice of brahmacharya helping us to remember that we are not just the 3D world. It isn't that we don't return to the 3D world, but we have to remember, like when my son was 12, I pulled him out of school because he was really, really struggling. He was bullied brutally. He was super lanky and kind of awkward, and I don't know. He kind of had that big X on his back that all the bullies wanted to pick on. And so, of course, he didn't tell me because he's pretty shy and quiet too. And but it was really affecting his ability to learn. And by the time he hit 12, grade 7, he just believed he was stupid. He believed he was dumb. He believed what everyone else believed about him. And one day I was helping him with his math, and he just said, "Mom, just give up. I'm stupid, okay?" And that was it. I just lost it, and I pulled him out of school. But I never intended him to stay home with me. I intended for him to return to school at one point, but it's like he needed to heal. He needed to reconnect with himself. He needed to remember who he was, undefined by the bullies. And that's a lot what brahmacharya is for. It's to be able to withdraw our senses and remember, I am not the external world. There is an entire universe inside that is rich and incredible and amazing. And when I can reconnect with that, I can then go out in the world and experience it again. And so my son, he spent 1 year at home with me, kind of catching up on the 3 R's, and he worked on the farm with his dad. And he went back to school when he was in grade 8. And he was fine. Like, he was sort of reconstituted. That's why we do say something like brahmacharya. That's why we release the sight when we meditate and we sit. And you want to sit. This is why it's so important to not be brave when you're meditating and try to sit like a yogi when your hips don't want to. Use cushions. Use whatever you can so that you can't feel your body, that you're not aware of the pain, you're not aware of the discomfort. Do whatever you can to be as comfortable as possible so that when you close your eyes, all that sensory input disappears. And as the sensory input disappears, we start to connect with what's going on inside. And if we have a chance to actually get even little moments of a sense of that infinite self, and it may just flicker in and out because the mind likes to chatter and chew about, whatever's going on in our life in the silence also. But, and if you struggle with this, I highly recommend looking up something called Kayastherium. I'm going to type it here. Kayastherium. It's a beautiful technique about how to release the body by focusing on the body. It's very, very beautiful. I'll do Kayastherium on Friday in our pranayama class. It's really cool. But what it does is it allows us to release the body. And when we can release the body and all the senses, we are left with this beautiful stillness inside. This is our 7th chakra. This is our connection to all. This is our portal to the oneness. But the key is we have to keep the connection open all the time, right? We have to keep this amazing connection. How do we do that? How do we maintain this connection? One is certainly through meditation, right? In whatever way you need. Maybe you need to do some Kundalini yoga, you need to go for a run, or you need to have a hot shower or something, and then sit in meditation. Maybe you even need quiet yoga music in the background to let your brain go off and do something while you connect inward. Who knows what brings you to that place? But this, every second we spend connected to that seventh chakra, it expands in something very effortless and passive and beautiful. The biggest thing to stay connected to it is to believe in it. And I don't mean a false, like a blind faith or something like that. That's not what I mean. I mean to genuinely ask ourselves, do I even believe in this? Do I actually think that I am a divine being? Do I believe I even have a seventh chakra? Is that a thing? And to really go inside and ask ourselves, if I am, then I need to keep remembering that. I need to keep remembering that. It's funny, I remember in Alcoholics Anonymous, in the big book, they describe an agnostic as someone who says they believe in God, but they act like they don't. And this is just their definition, so we can have a long discussion about what agnostics and atheists are. And that's really interesting to me, because I think in a lot of ways, that's kind of what I'm talking about here, that we can give words to the fact that, yes, I have a seventh chakra and I'm a divine being having a human experience. But am I acting like that? Am I remembering that on a day-to-day basis? Because this is where it's really valuable, that when we're actually in the arena of life, right? We're actually in the thick of it. We are having a struggle with another person. We're struggling with a child or a parent or a boss or a colleague. In that moment, can we close our eyes and remember this connection? Because it doesn't just solve the problem. It's not like that. It's not like suddenly you're like, I am above this. I do not need to bother with you little humans. It's not like that. It's not a disconnect. When we have this lovely connection inside, suddenly what we're going through right now is put in its proper perspective. That's all. And suddenly what we see, we're all of a sudden able to see through our third eye, and we're able to see what's really going on. We're given more perspective, more sight into this interaction. We remember to ask, oh, right, I am a divine being. I don't say this really out loud in my head, but it's like, okay, I'm going to ask for help right now. And I remember to close my eyes and ask for help, and ask for different words to help communicate with this other person. And then what happens is magical things happen. We change how we act, we change what we say, and the whole situation changes. We stop repeating the past. We stop, it's almost like we stop repeating our karma. We sorted it. And all of a sudden, everything changes. And afterwards, we're sitting there going, okay, it's way better. That was completely unexpected, right? We're kind of in this, I don't understand what happened. That further connects us to our seventh chakra. And all of a sudden, the seventh chakra is like, yeah, I'm really good on the team. Like I help. I'm worthy. I'm a worthy player, right? And so bit by bit, we stay connected to that. And then all of a sudden, you're having a difficult time, maybe at work even, and you just don't know what to do. And you remember and you back up and you say, okay, hold on. Let's consider everybody here. Ah, I get it. All right, here's the answer. And it really is a practical thing, right? This incarnation is here on the earth. This is meant to help us. It's meant to be part of our experience. And all we have to do is access it, but we have to actually believe that it's a part of us. And it's a bit of a challenge because a lot of the world has taught us that we are just lowly humans. You know, sinful from birth and broken and all these things. And it's like, we're not broken. Nobody here is broken. You know, we may have adapted to a pretty hostile situation, but we're not broken. All our chakras are still right here. We just have to look to them, you know, for help. The other thing we can do is go into nature. Because nature, like really unadulterated nature, like real forest or ocean or lake or something like that's still itself. Because again, not in a way that our brain can understand, but nature operates as a whole. It operates as a oneness. All the moving pieces fit together and work together. So there's something interesting about being in nature. Again, this part of our brain that isn't our brain, that our mind, our eternal self, remembers something. It remembers what it is to be in oneness when we're in nature. That's why it's often really nice to be silent in nature. One time I was traveling there's an island here in Ontario called Manitoulin Island. And a friend of mine we went on a road trip. We were on the ferry and there was this woman on the phone and I could hear her talking on the phone and she was like, well, I'm just going to hitchhike then if you won't pick me up or something like that. And she goes, and I just need to get to this little town. And this was the town that we were going to. So I went over to her and I said, hey, do you want to ride? You know, we'll drive you there. And she's like, yeah, for sure, right? And she was an older lady. She was an older Indigenous lady. And so she gets in the car. And so I'm like, what's your story? Who are you? Blah, blah, blah. Well, of course, she turns out to be this Indigenous storyteller who travels the world sharing Indigenous wisdom. I'm like, yes. And so we drove all around the island. It was the most epic, like, holy mackerel experience, right? And then she said, would you like to go to Spirit Rock? And she said, you know, it's not something that people can find. Like, it's not on the map. It actually, we do get to it from a conservation area, but you actually have to be with an elder from the tribe to actually get there. And so we're like, yeah. Well, the wild thing is we drive up, we get permission and all that kind of thing. And we drive up and she says, here's the only thing. We're not allowed to talk until we get to Spirit Rock. 0 talking is allowed. And it was like, okay, I can do it. So we walk, and it was wild to follow her, right? Because we're walking along, and all of a sudden she'd just stop, and she would turn, and then we would scale some crazy rock that you would never have imagined we would go. And then you would go along a bit further, and then she'd stop, and she'd look, and we would take a whole different, trajectory. Anyway, but we were in dead silence all the way up. And we finally get to Spirit Rock. And of course, we don't really have much to say because there was a magic in the journey to get there in silence. It was so interesting because it was even like the first 10-15 minutes, my mind was swirling and spinning and chewing and pondering and trying to imagine the ancient people walking up here with their wounded and sick, because that's what they would do. They would take the wounded and sick up to this, which was quite a thing because Spirit Rock is really hard to get to. And So, of course, my mind is going through stories. But then after about 15 minutes, my mind went completely blank. And I was just following. And it was almost like then I started to experience the forest. I started to experience something very magical. So there's something about being in nature, but allowing silence, right? To really allow us to release the thoughts. Because the thing is, our thoughts and our language comes from our three-dimensional mind, and it blocks our ability to hear what's going on up here. So there's lots we can do to connect with it. So the last thing I want to mention is I want to circle back to this idea about the fountain of youth. And what's really interesting about the pineal gland being connected with the fountain of youth and melatonin and all these magical chemicals inside of us. When we connect with our seventh chakra, we live in timelessness. Time and space doesn't exist. The time and space continuum exists in the three-dimensional world. That is duality. It's the definition of duality. As we rise through the chakras and we come in, by the time we're in the seventh does not exist in time and space. So when we explore there, when we play there, when we spend more time there, time doesn't move the way it does when we're fully wrapped up in the village, right? So when I don't have an answer to this, but my sense is that it is our connection to the oneness that creates eternal youth. Whatever you believe that to be. You know, it is our belief in this, our understanding of this, our experience of Advaita, our experience of the oneness, and knowing that all things are one, all things are part of this. You know, that I really am you. We are all one. And we're going to play in this separate world. But there's something magical about having that little connector inside, that no matter what we do, we stay connected to that. And I kind of think that's the fountain of youth. Because time disappears. You just don't experience time the same way. You don't experience space the same way. You start playing there and suddenly you're having conversations with people and they call you because space disappeared and they heard you talking. Or all kinds of things that, you know, we've talked about before, that fun things that can happen in the ethers. So it's a very interesting thing that it's very hard to talk about. But we're all very able to experience it. Even sitting here right now, can you imagine if you close your eyes and you imagine releasing the world, just letting it go, and releasing your connections to others. You can always come back, but just for now, we're just going to release it. Then we release our connection to our third chakra, who we are. We even release this loving connection, compassion, empathy, all that. We release the need to speak or to share. We release the need to listen. And we just float around, observing the world. It's a very blissful state. Like it's sort of empty, not in a bad way, but it has no attachments. And then what's really cool is we get to add it all back. Like once we spend time connected there, then we can start listening again and going, okay, what could I do today? And then sharing and then loving and then knowing who I am and interacting with others and fitting in. Like it's like starting from there and then playing in the world. It's very peaceful and lovely. I can be in quiet but just feel empty or wondering how to feel the bliss. The bliss is weird. It's like you have to redefine bliss. Like we define bliss as in a 3D way, like extreme pleasure or sunshine. Like we define bliss as a physical sensation almost. But instead, it's like if we sit in the quiet, in the silence, it's almost like we have to stay there until we're no longer we're not observing ourselves in the silence. And then this amazing bliss just flows over us. Kind of like, lying on the blanket on an island in Georgian Bay. At first your brain is going, oh wow, this is nice, this is awesome. Oh, that sun feels great. I'm glad there's no bugs. This is great. And all of a sudden you stop narrating it or something. And it's this bliss of emptiness. But it's not emptiness. It's all. Yeah, it's very different. In one of my talks, I told a way to connect with all the chakras. Yeah. So this is a chakra. It's actually an energy balancing exercise. You can do it if you're a healer or if you work with people with energy and stuff too, but we can do it on ourselves, where you place your left hand on your crown chakra, the little fontanelle there, and it's interesting, especially if you do this lying down. I highly recommend doing it lying down. That there is a pulse that comes out of every chakra that's different than the pulse of your hand. And so you put your left hand on your crown chakra and you put your right hand on your first chakra over the perineum. And you may feel, not everybody feels this, you may have to do it a few times to feel it, but you'll feel a pulsing in your right hand and a pulsing in your left, and they're often different. And so you lie there until the two pulses are in unison. Then you move your right hand to your second chakra, just below your belly button. And again, you feel the two different pulses. Then you move up to your third, then you move up to your fourth, then you move up to your fifth, you move up to your sixth, and you just spend time with each one, allowing the pulsing to become in unison. And you don't switch or anything. It's just that the left is on the top, and you just go from the first up to the sixth. And you may not feel anything, and if you don't feel anything, it's okay. You're still reconnecting the electrical circuit, whether you feel it or not. But it's very cool. Cool exercise. I heard a yogi talking about how the chakras are like flowers and bloom upward, not outward, like in many illustrations. Yeah, I'm totally with you, because I remember one time I was at a friend's house and she paints all these amazing sacred geometry paintings. And the way she had painted the chakras, we often see the chakras almost as a two-dimensional picture. Like, this is the Star of David, or this is, But for the first time, whenever I saw these paintings, and I realized these aren't two-dimensional. They're three-dimensional or multi-dimensional. We're actually looking at the edge of crystal, but we're just seeing, we've drawn it on a piece of paper, but they're going in all directions. They're not what we think it is. Yeah, more like a prism, exactly. spinning, right? Even better. Imagine instead they're spinning prisms. And that what we draw is our best guess at what we can see from this spinning prism, right? Yeah, even better. Also with the yin yang sign, exactly. If you imagine, like, we see it as these two sides, but I had the same experience. Thank you for mentioning it. Because that imagine instead it was circular, and the hole that we see, like, you know how in the yin yang symbol there's a white and there's a black hole, and in the black there's a white hole. And I saw it more like a Mobius strip where it's like this, and that white is actually filling this white, and the black is actually filling this black, and they're perpetually becoming each other. Like they're actually doing this. But oh yeah, I'm 100% with you. Yeah, always flowing and moving. But our two-dimensional picture looks like this, but it's actually this, right? A prism capturing and offering outward the beauty of light in all aspects of the color spectrum, finding ways to visualize it personally. It can feel exactly. My head hurts. Well, and that's the fun thing, right? Is when when Einstein used to say that. I love how we just quote Einstein. Like, he used to say this like all the time. Einstein used to say that a problem cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness it was created. That's the same thing to me. That if I'm sort of swirling in the 3D world and getting really caught up in it, because it's so easy to do, it's very juicy, right? As soon as I can just quiet my mind and remember, it's like, hold on a minute. How does this fit into the whole? How does this fit into the whole of my life? How does it fit bigger? And then I open my eyes and I have a new solution, right? It's just so important. And even understanding, multidimensional chakras or yin-yang symbols, that takes you to the other quote, that the sign of true genius is being able to hold two opposing ideas in your mind at the same time and not go crazy. And I don't think they're talking about, oh, that person must be a genius. I think this is the key to accessing all of our genius. That if we can allow the world to be more than we think, more than we can think, more than we can conceptualize, and allow that to flow through our consciousness, that also exists, while I'm aware of what I do understand, I think that's how we each tap into our own genius. Well, thank you guys so much. And we'll see you soon. See you later.